And good evening, good morning, good day, wherever you are in the world. And thank you so much for joining another live stream from a home in Italy. My name is David Benton, and together with my wife, Silvana, for the last 15 years, we've been helping people buy, move out here to beautiful Italy and restore properties here, and carrying on with the same enthusiasm as we had many years ago. So, well, I'm saying that, but yeah, no, it is. No, that's true. That is true. Thank you so much for joining us again on another live Thursday evening, live from Abruzzo, where the weather at the moment is a little bit miserable. And it's been one of those weeks, to be fair. But there you go. We all have them sometimes. Even living in these great places, we sometimes have those weeks where you just want to forget about life, don't you? But there you go. So hope everybody is doing really, really well. And again, thank you so much for joining us. If it's the first time, then welcome. Hopefully, you'll be joining us again. You're going to be joining us over the coming weeks and months as we cover loads of different subjects about buying, restoring, and all that kind of thing here in wonderful Italy. So I can see people are gradually joining us. I do think there's a delay, so I've been told, from YouTube and Facebook. I think there's a little bit of delay for people to get in there, but hopefully more people are going to come in shortly. So just to let you know, next week, I'm going to give you the next few programs. Next week, we have a bit of a follow-on from this one, because this one we're talking about all the deposit contracts and that type of thing that you put down, or that you sign, should I say, if you're interested in a property here in Abruzzo. And we're going to follow that on next week, so the 9th of March, inside the notary's office. Now, this seems to be a subject that lots of people are sort of usually a little bit sort of worried about when it comes to the notary part. That's the easy bit. That's the bit when it all comes together, and that's the bit when you get your house. So next week, I'm going to tell you all about what happens inside the notary's office. I'm going to show you a couple of photographs of one of the notaries that I use a lot, and you can see what it's like. You can see that it's not this scary court type situation. And I'll also go through the contract and how the final contract is made up, how it looks, and all that kind of thing. So you really get used to what actually happens when it comes to the legalities of all of this. And then on the 16th of March, we're doing a new one, which is a €1 property versus a €100,000 property. We're going to talk about restorations. It's always a big subject, this one, but we're going to be talking about, obviously, the €1 properties have become a little bit of a thing recently, with lots of people interested in that kind of thing. But there is a bit of an argument to be had to maybe spend that little bit more and get something that's already sort of up and running. So we're going to be talking a little bit about restoring properties. I'm going to be hopefully giving you a few guidelines on prices and that kind of thing. And I'm also going to show you some of the restorations that we had done here, just to give you an idea of the kind of finish and that kind of thing. Because the builders out here are fantastic if you get the right ones. But that's like anywhere in the world. With builders, you get good ones and you get the ones that are not so great. But I'm going to talk about restoration, so that should be a great one on the 16th. Then on the 23rd of March, we're going back to the Meet the Home Buyers. There's a couple of people that I'm looking at. There's actually one couple that came on a tour last year. I'm hoping to get them on, because we actually help them with the signing tomorrow, where the guy's just got his visa from the US. He's just got his visa accepted in record time again. And he's actually moved out yesterday. Last time I spoke to him, he was on the road. So I'm really hoping that he comes along. I'm not going to mention his name just yet, just in case he can't do it this time. But hopefully he will. If not, we have a number of people lined up to do this. So that's always a great one. That's 23rd of March. And then on the 30th, it's time to be depressed, because we have Mr. Doom and Gloom, the Grim Reaper himself, our resident accountant, Gianluigi, who's going to be coming in and telling you all about different tax rates and that kind of thing. And if you decide to move out here, some of the great benefits there are of moving out here, which is the 7% schemes. But he's also going to talk about if you have a holiday home here, if you're looking to buy a property maybe to rent out, to Airbnb it or something like that. So that's going to be an interesting one. Gianluigi is a great person, but well, what can we say? Nobody likes talking about taxes, do we? The other thing that I wanted to remind everybody about is the Home in Italy on the Road tour. So on the 4th and 5th of May, I have mentioned this a few times. I'm going to mention it again. We have about 5, possibly 6 spaces left on this. So it is pretty much sold out. So if you are interested, please get in touch using our email address, which is info@ahomeinitaly.com. Basically, what we're doing is we're meeting on the 3rd in Pescara. So if you're coming from the UK, we'll be collecting from Pescara Airport. So that is in line with the Ryanair flight from London Stansted into Pescara. If you're coming from outside of Europe or anywhere else in Europe, then we will be meeting at Pescara, just outside the train station. There's a hotel close by. So that will be on the 3rd of May, where we go for an aperitivo, a little bit of a walk around Pescara, show you the beach area, have a drink together, and explain what's going to happen over the following days. And then on the 4th and the 5th, we then collect you from a place close to the railway station in Pescara, where most people stay in a particular hotel, which I will send you information of. And we collect you from there first thing in the morning, and we head off out to see a number of towns and villages, and also properties along the way as well. So these tours are really, really good. You end up spending time with people that are looking to do the same thing as you, and we always find them really successful, because people tend to bounce off each other and all that kind of thing, which is great. So the 4th and the 5th, we spend time going around different villages, seeing different properties. We have lunch together. We usually have a great lunch. We usually do things like wine tasting as well. There's a bit of everything that goes off on these things. So hopefully you're going to join us. And then on the 6th, anybody going back to the airport at Pescara, we take people back to the airport. If not, then obviously you're in Pescara. You can get the train or wherever you want to go, anywhere in the world. So hopefully, if you are interested in joining us now, as I say, we've got about 5 or 6 spaces left, then please email me at info@ahomeinitaly.com. And I'll send you the PDF about it all. There is a cost to it. It is €295 per person. Doesn't include accommodation, unfortunately. The prices of car hire and the rest of it has meant that we've had to knock accommodation on the head. But you do get picked up, dropped off. You spend a few days with us, which that's got to be worth the money in itself, surely to God. But you do get picked up, dropped off, and you do have food and lots of other great things that happen through the day. So if you are interested, as I say, please email me at info@ahomeinitaly.com and I will send you the information. Okay, so that's me finished with all the advertising. So I think we may have a problem. Not sure, Tony, if anybody is coming through from Facebook, but oh yeah, I can see a few from Facebook, because one of the streams seems to be down at the minute. But there you go. Hopefully everybody can see me okay, and hope everybody can hear okay. We're going to get onto our subject now, where we're talking about contracts and that type of thing. So before we move on to deposit contracts, I do want to talk a little bit about a particular contract that most of you probably don't even know exists. So before I sort of get onto the deposit side of it, I want to tell you about a contract that you may be asked to sign even before you start viewing a property, which you may think sounds a little bit strange, but it is true. There is a particular contract, and I'm going to tell you how that works now. And this ties in a little bit with, I want to talk briefly about how estate agents work here, because I do get a number of emails coming through asking me how the system works and if it's similar to either the US system or the Canadian system and things like that. And what I want to tell you is it's absolutely nothing like that system. And when we set up Home in Italy, we wanted to try and get more in line with that system, because we like the idea of dealing with one person or one company that can then help you sort of go around the area and navigate different properties and that kind of thing. But I want to tell you how traditional estate agents work before anything else, and that will then lead into this contract that you may be surprised to hear about. So basically, the way things work here, very rarely you will get estate agents working together, unfortunately. They tend to have their own patch and their own properties, and quite protective over that. So it is normal here that when you're looking at properties and that kind of thing, that you could be coming to see maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, however many different estate agents. Now, it can seem a little bit of a pain to you to do that, because I know in some countries you just have one person, they look after anything, but that is not how it works here. Now, we do try and create that kind of system within A Home in Italy, which is why we're registered in a slightly different way. So it is always worth sending us an email at the usual, the info@homeinitaly.com, to see if we can help. If you are coming, particularly if you're coming to Abruzzo, to see if some of the properties that you're interested are with agents that we regularly work with, because we do work with a number of different agents, as well as private sellers who are advertising on our website, and they're the ones that I take you around to see. So the way estate agents work is they will look after their set of properties. So as I say, very rarely they will work with other agents. It can happen, but it doesn't always happen. So they're quite protective over their set of properties. So you will have to make sure that you contact each one of these people. And it can be quite difficult to set these things up. So what I would suggest, and it still happens to me a lot now, and I really, really would highly recommend that you sort out your appointments in plenty of time. Because from now until, let's say, the end of July, we're coming into the busiest period where people are coming out. So leaving things while a few days before or even a week before, you're going to find it really difficult to get these appointments to all match up. The fact that Abruzzo is so big is one thing, but to get round all of these different towns and villages and meet different agents, you're going to absolutely drive yourself insane. Hopefully, if any of you watched the live stream that we did about Abruzzo, you've already started to zone it into certain areas if you are coming here, and you can sort of try and visit people in the certain areas that I spoke about. But anywhere in Italy, any sort of part of Italy, you're talking about covering hundreds and hundreds of miles with completely different agents at completely different times and all that, and it will turn into a nightmare. So I would suggest that you make contact with them as soon as possible, because a week before or the same day, unfortunately, I've had some people that have said to me, you know, we're here now, can we come tomorrow? It just becomes impossible, especially at this time of year. And it's going to be the same as well with other agents. So if you are planning on coming, make sure you do it in advance. Now, those estate agents, as I said, they are quite protective over their properties, and they're quite protective over who sees them, not who sees them, quite protective over who gets paid if you are interested in that property. And that may seem a little bit strange, but I'm going to explain why shortly. But to get into your mind, first of all, the estate agents work on their own, so give them plenty of notice and make your contacts as soon as possible. Hopefully you're going to come and see us. They usually charge 3% plus EVA, which is VAT, which is currently 22%. And there's usually a minimum charge of €3,000 plus the VAT. So if you're looking at property of 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, up to the 100K, then expect to pay a minimum of €3,000 plus VAT. And that is paid as a commission. Now, the reason why we decided to do what we do, just to give a quick plug for us, seems though it's my stream, so I'm allowed to. The reason why we decided to register ourselves the way we do is because we can't charge you a commission. We don't charge you a commission. We charge you for services. And those services include opening your bank account where possible when you're here, getting you tax codes to get you set up, do the translations, all of that kind of thing, take you to the notary's office, go through, have a geometer by our side that goes through everything. So we tend to, rather than just charging a commission, which we're not allowed to do, then we offer a service. But be prepared that agents will charge that commission, which is a normal thing. They charge both the buyer and the seller. So that is 3% plus VAT, usually with a minimum of €3,000. Now, the reason why estate agent can charge two people, it is classed as a professional business in the sense of they can actually write up contracts as well. And there's a particular contract that we're going to talk about shortly that they can legally draw up and legally bind you together with a buyer. So it is classed as a professional industry, which is why they can charge the way they do. Rob's saying, why do the seller and buyer both have to pay fees and the fees are not cheap? It's just the way it is, Rob. It's as simple as that. You know, is that the buyer and seller pays. That's just the way it is. Obviously, if they're going to do a percentage on cheaper properties, they could end up earning very little money. But that's just the way the agency structure is made up here. I'm not going to pull it down because I've been part of an estate agent for many, many years here, and we charge those structured fees as well. But what I will say is what we did then and what we do now is much more for our money, and hopefully people will see that once they start using our services. But you have to just get over that fact. And sometimes when you see people talking on social media and that kind of thing, they say, oh, just tell the agents that you're going to give them this much and try bartering with them and the rest of it. it doesn't always work like that, because agents are busy in most areas of Italy, and they won't give up their commissions very easily. So, be prepared that that is what you're going to have to pay. Now, the reason why I'm talking about agents to start with is because the first contract that you could potentially be asked to sign may be one of the weirdest ones ever. So this is before we get to a deposit. Let's just talk about this one first. And it is called, once I find it is called attestazione di visita. So I can hear you all saying, well, what's that all about then, Dave? So I'll tell you. Basically, what this is a contract that can be drawn up at 2 points during you visiting a property. Now, agents that are maybe not used to dealing with overseas buyers and are very structured and very rigid in what they're doing, there's lots of them like that, and not very flexible, they will ask you to come into the office before you go on any viewing trips. And what they will do is they will say, I'm going to show you this property, and this property, or you've asked to see this property and this property. And you need to sign a contract stating that you have visited that property with that estate agent, and that you understand that if you buy that property, then the fee to pay is this much. And the reason why they do that is to stop people basically from them showing you a property and then you going back the day after talking to the owner yourself and thinking, well, let's do this privately. And they will tie you into a point where they're saying, look, we've taken you to see the property, we've done this work so far, so you need to sign to say that you viewed it with us, you've accepted that you viewed it with us, and you've accepted that there's a fee to pay if you buy it. It may all sound strange, but it is a contract that you must look out for. So hopefully, you can write these down. Obviously, we keep these videos live on YouTube, so you should be able to look at these again. But attestazione di visita. So if I sometimes see again on certain social media sites where people say, I've been asked to do this, what does everybody think? And then you get all the armchair experts, as I like to call them, jumping on there saying that is ridiculous, not true whatsoever, I would never do that. Well, it is true, and it is something. And they can actually refuse to take you if you don't do it. The other time when they will ask you to do it, the really rigid ones will get you into the office first, and you'll need to sign that before you even get in the car. If they meet you at the property, then don't be surprised during your visit if all these pieces of paper come out and you're asked to sign. It is a normal thing. Obviously, nobody can grab your hand and make you sign, and really, technically, you shouldn't be signing anything that's not in your own language. So you can request that it is in your own language. As I say, nobody can grab hold of your arm and make you do it, but you may well be asked. And that is the reason why. It is to cover their backs, to make sure that if you buy that property, not necessarily even in that trip, but let's say you leave it a month and think, oh, I know where that is now, I'm going to go back. There will be a date on that contract that could be extended, and it could last for a long time. So be prepared. That is something that you could be asked to do. Not everybody does it, but it is quite common out here. So don't be surprised if that does happen. So that's before you sort of view a property. Now, the idea of this particular live stream is to talk about deposit contracts and what they mean to you. So let's get on to that one. So let's say you've been viewing with an estate agent, and you like a particular property and you want to put an offer in for that property. Now, in the UK, I'm going to speak about the UK because obviously that's where I'm from. People tend to put offers in for properties, and sometimes people will even put offers on 2 or 3 properties. It is a little bit of a rat race, and it's actually quite unfair because people can put offers in and without any commitment whatsoever, and just put offers on and think, okay, well, I'll wait to see who comes back with the best deal, and then I'll go for that one. It doesn't really work like that here. Because basically, if you want to put an offer in for a property, forgive me for using this term, but you have to put your money where your mouth is a lot of the time. So we go on to a contract, and this is the contract that can be drawn up, sorry, not that one, can be drawn up by an estate agent. And these are contracts that pretty much only an estate agent will use, the proposta di acquisto, which is a proposal to buy, and it is a legally binding contract. Yes, estate agents can draw these up, and they are legally binding. So that's why the estate agency profession is seen as it is, because of this type of thing, because they can draw these up. So this is quite a serious document when it gets to this proposal to buy. And it is a document that some people, when people fall in love with a property, and obviously you're going to get people saying, well, you know, if you want this property, you're going to have to do this, this, and this. And people tend to sign these documents and then think about the consequences after. I don't know why it happens. And even though I can hear most of you saying, well, I would never do that, there's going to be a percentage of you that do, because I hear from a lot of people that are at that stage that have actually signed something and then they come asking for help to really see what this means. So a proposta di acquisto is, as I said before, a proposal to buy. So let's say you love the property. You're coming to view my house and you absolutely love it, and you give me an offer of 100,000 euros, and you say to me, you know, I would like to offer you 100,000 euros. What happens is you would go to the estate agents. You would say, really like that property. I'm prepared to offer 100K for that property. The estate agent will get you to sign a form that has details of that property on there. It's quite it's usually only a page, possibly. Sometimes a couple of pages, but proposta di acquisto is usually a page. It has information about the property, it has information about the cadastral information, so what's held at the land registry. And it will have the owner's details and all of that kind of thing, and your details. And your proposal is, I am proposing to give you an offer of X amount. You will sign that. So let's say it's 100K, and you will leave a deposit at the same time with the estate agent. So you'll say, okay, I want to do a proposta di acquisto. I am going to leave you, it's up to you how much you leave. I'm going to leave you 5,000 euros or 1,000 euros in a check to the estate agency. And basically that is saying, contact the owner and let them, if they accept it, then they can sign the document and take that check. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking, check? We've never used checks in years, but yes, they do still use checks here. But if you've just come from wherever it is you come from, you're not going to have a bank account. You probably haven't got tax codes or anything like that. So what the estate agent may ask you to do is sign the form, and then you have so long to send the money by bank transfer. So they would basically contact the owner, say, you had an offer here for 100K, would you accept it? If the owner says, yes, we will accept it, they will come, they will sign to say they accept it. You will sign to say you're going to pay for it. The estate agent will then give you a copy of that proposta di acquisto and ask you to send the money direct to the owners. That is how it works. Now, you may think that it sounds a little bit sort of harsh, or you know, just to sort of come over and want to put an offer in, and all of a sudden then you've got to put money where your mouth is, as I said before. But that's how it is. If you're serious about that, buying that property, then obviously you will want to do this to make sure it's going to be your property at the end. Now, proposta di acquisto does have things attached to it where people are legally tied in. Let me just quickly answer questions as they come in, because this is one of those sessions where feel free to answer questions as we go along. Can a buyer pull out of a purchase after paying a deposit of, let's say, 2,000 on a 300,000 property? Okay, well, Rob, usually putting a couple of K on a 300K property, the estate agents may allow you to do it, and a proposta di acquisto, so just the proposal part, but that it is quite low. But you can back out. You need to check the wording in the contract, but you will lose the money that you've paid. So it can't be just something of, okay, well, I'll give them that money just to hold it. That doesn't work like that here. But as soon as you put your money in, then there are, I can't think of the word that I want to tell you now, but there are, come on, Tony, help me with this word. You're stuck into this contract, you know, and there can be points where you have to pay extra money to get out of that contract. And that kind of thing. So the proposta di acquisto, the idea is, look, you're serious about buying, you want to make an offer, and you're going to hold the property almost by saying to that owner, I'm prepared to give you 100K, you've accepted it, here's a deposit, and then let's move on to the next document. So proposta di acquisto is a serious document. Now, there can be penalties. That's the word I was looking for. There can be penalties for either side, and usually the penalties are that you would lose your deposit and the owner would have to pay back double if they decide to back out. but these things need to be written into the document. So there's a couple of words that I'm going to teach you that you need to make sure that's in these documents to make sure that you're covered. Rob is saying, Remax Lanciano refused my request to pull out. Now, it depends in what... Again, I can't really talk about sort of individual cases. I mean, you'd have to contact me, to be honest with you. If you contact me at info@homeinitaly.com and let's look at things. But as I say, if you do pull out, then you would lose the deposit that you've paid. So depending what you've signed for somebody to make you buy it, we'd have to see what you signed. But anyway, the most important thing to realize is they are serious things, because I do sometimes get asked a lot that I've seen a property that I really love, really excited, really want to buy it. Can I put something down just to hold it while I come and see it? It doesn't really exist. It doesn't exist at all here. So the only way you can hold it is by signing a contract. So as I say, the proposta di acquisto, my favorite way of doing it, because the thing to remember is as well, when you put money onto a property, now the documents may not be 100% correct. So in other words, it may not be registered properly with land registry. There could be some errors on it. We spoke about this kind of thing before on other live streams. So there are things to protect yourself, which I'm going to go through in a second. Let me just answer this question. Please mention when the estate agent is entitled to collect the fee. In the US, no payment is earned, due unpaid until the title is closed. Well, that's not the same here. Again, some agents may wait while the end, but believe it or not, at this time of proposta di acquisto, the estate agent's work is finished, because all they need to do is put together buyer and seller and get this contract signed, and that's their job done. Because if you don't buy at the end, the money that would come back to you as a penalty from the owner should be enough to cover the expenses that you've paid out, because they pay you double back. So no, estate agents can ask for their commissions right at the very beginning. Not everybody does, but they can ask that. For that. So what I was telling you before about the contracts, what you need to be aware of, and we've mentioned in other streams, that sometimes documents can be incorrect, and it will be written on the proposal to buy. They will say that the owner has to make sure that the documents are in order, blah, 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 blah. And the vast majority of the time, they can be sorted out with no problem whatsoever. But sometimes some problems can take a little bit longer than others. Now, to protect yourself in a way, it would be if you came out to Italy in plenty of time and opened a bank account and left a check with the estate agent, not with the owner, without the owner banking it. Leave it with the estate agent to say, I'm signing a proposal to buy. I understand that there's problems with the documents. I'm quite happy to leave a 5K deposit with the estate agent. The owner comes along and signs the document, so it becomes legally binding and has all the effects and has all the penalties, even though they've not received the money. And what happens then is the owner goes away, fixes the problems, comes back to the estate agent, provides them with all the documents and says, everything is okay. Can I have my deposit money now? And that is one way of doing it. The problem is, obviously, if you haven't got a bank account and you haven't got a check or anything like that, then you're sending money to the owner. They are still in contract. And sometimes the owners will say, well, look, I need this money to alter these documents to get it right, because it's going to cost me 2 or 3 grand. I need to make sure that you're serious. So the idea is that these proposals, these contracts, are serious contracts, and both people are tied in, as I say, with consequences. So the proposta di acquisto is one that you will always see and always done by an estate agent. And it's quite a basic contract, and it's usually the first one and usually the contract where you pay least money for the deposit. So on 100K, you may just leave a couple of K, you may leave 5K, you may leave 1,000. So that's what a proposta di acquisto is. More it is a proposal buy. It's the intention to buy from somebody. I intend to buy your property for this much. If you accept that, then here is a payment to say that I'm serious, and you take that payment, and let's move on to the next stage. There's also time schedules and things like that. It's usually written into the contract when the final contract's going to be done, or when the next contract is going to be done. So the next contract, ideally, in an ideal world, you would have if you've got the funds already and you've got a good relationship with the person who's taking you around, or your estate agent, whoever it is, then ideally you just go straight to the signing. Because if this is going to take so long to sort out, to do all these preliminary contracts that we're talking about now, but you've got the funds ready, in an ideal world, and the system that I prefer is just saying, look, you know what, let's just book the notary and let's get this thing done, instead of doing all these commitments. Now, it doesn't always happen like that, but if you are ready and you're good to go, then if you can go down that line, for me, it is better, because you're just going straight to the final contract, you're giving them the money, and then you're taking the keys. So it's just usually proposta di acquisto and things like a compromesso, a promise to buy, that we're going to do next, is usually for people that need a little bit more time. Maybe the owners need time to move out, maybe the owners need time to sort out the documents, and maybe you need time to get your funds together and all that kind of thing. So it is if you can go straight to it, do it. If not, then you have to go down one of these lines. So the next one is a compromesso, or preliminary. It can be called a number of things. Compromesso is a promise to sell, promise to buy. So you may think, well, the last one is similar, but the last one is a proposal. I'm proposing, I buy your property, I'm proposing this offer for you. Once the offer is actually sorted out, then you can go on to the, okay, so we've all agreed that that's the price. I've given you a little deposit to get moving on. Now we want to go to the real thing, where I am promising to buy and you are promising to sell. So this is a slightly bigger document, if you like, because as the documents go along, the proposta di acquisto it still has lots of information. It has all the information that you need in there. Then the compromesso has a little bit more information about how things are going to be paid, more definite dates and all that kind of thing. And then you have the final contract, which we're going to talk about obviously next week, that's done at the notary's office. That's the rogito, and that's where it's more in-depth again. And it's also to do with the descriptions of the property. The final contract has much more descriptions of not just the basic land registry information, but also who borders the property. So there can be no mistake whatsoever that we're talking about different properties, because we're given all the land registry details, we're given all this other stuff, and then we're saying, and it borders so-and-so, borders so-and-so, borders the road on two sides, and so on, and so on, and so on. And so these documents get more complex as they go along. And the compromesso is, again, a serious document, just the same as the other one. Now, who can draw a compromesso up? So compromesso can be done at the notary's office. So a notary can draw a compromesso with no problem at all. You can both go to the notary and get this done. It can be drawn up also by a geometer. A geometer can draw these up with no problem at all. You can actually draw them up yourself if you know all the correct wording to go in there to create something that's legally binding. So it doesn't have to be, most people think that you have to go to solicitors and things like that. As I've said to you before, solicitors do not do conveyancing in Italy. And even though some people would prefer to go that way, that's not the norm here. Usually, I would say probably the vast majority of transactions between Italians, a compromesso or a promise to buy, promise to sell document will probably get drawn up by the local geometer. A geometer is similar to a surveyor. Most of you know how much I think geometers are worth their weight in gold, because they will check the documents of the properties, make sure everything's all right. They can give you information on restoring properties and all that kind of thing. And then they can do this kind of thing where they draw a legally binding document up between you and the seller of the property. Also in this compromesso, and also in the document before, it will be stated in there how much you have to pay to the estate agents as well. So everybody that needs to be paid out will be mentioned at some point in each contract. So the compromesso, when you do this document, as I say, you're moving on to a bigger stage where you're really putting commitment on. And I would say at that stage, it is normal to put between 10 to 15% as a minimum down at this particular stage. The idea behind it is you're showing your real intention, what's going to happen. You're blocking that owner into an agreement that's much more serious, and the owner has to pay you double back. So remember, at that stage, you may have been asked to pay your estate agent. You may have asked a lawyer to help you so far. You may have paid other things out that, you're in this for a few thousand as it is. So the idea is then, if you put enough down, the owner has to give you double back to get out. That will cover all your expenses. Another question, are contingencies such as structural inspections, septic and well inspections usually included in the compromise and allow a buyer to terminate without penalty if they are not satisfactory? No, that is not how it works here. Unless it's actually put into your contract, unless it's something in particular that you say, okay, because all these inspections, these are things really that you want to do. Here, properties are sold usually as seen. So depending what kind of inspection you're wanting to do, if you're wanting to get somebody to come out and check if a property has any problems or anything like that, and remember, there's only certain things they will look at. You're not going to get an inspector that's going on the roof. You're not going to get an inspector that digs 10 meters underground to see what the foundations are like. You're going to get a general look at the property, but that's usually done before you then decide to make a commitment to buy a property. That's just part of it. Now, if, for instance, let's say there's a huge wet patch on the roof, and the owner says, "No, I've had that done," and you then say, "Well, look, okay, I've seen the receipts. I see that you have that done, but I want somebody else to come out, take a look at that roof, and I want something written into the contract that if it's not done, that it needs to be done." If it's something specific like that, then you can ask that to be added, but it's not something that's the norm, because by this point, it's already presumed that you've checked that property out and you're happy with what it is. In fact, there's phrases in there that say that you have seen the property, you like the property, and it's fit for the use of which you wish to use it. These are lines that go into all of these contracts and go into the final contract to make sure that the idea is that nobody can sue another person. It should be watertight. It should be to the point where if you said, "Well, I didn't know this," then somebody will say, "Well, there's a phrase here that says that you did know that." They cover absolutely everything. So it is at a stage where you like that property and you're happy with that property. If there are specifics, then you must mention it, because it will not be automatically written in there. Okay, so these contracts are basically, again, putting two people together for a promise to buy something and a promise to sell something. So going back to the compromise, so as I said, you would normally put sort of between 10 and 20% would be a norm. Now, if you back out at any point, you back out and there's nothing written into the contract that you're allowed to back out if X, Y, Z. If you back out, you will lose that money. It's as simple as that. The money is gone. If the owner backs out, then they have to pay you double back. So you need to put enough deposit down to cover all your expenses, if you've had any, to make sure that if the owner backs out, the double amount that they gave you has covered anything that you've already paid out. So the important things to remember when you put a deposit on, I want you to remember these two phrases, because these are really important. So the first one is a caparra confirmatoria. Now, a caparra is a deposit. That's Italian for a deposit. And by the way, all of these documents must be translated into a language that you understand. A lot of the time, agents won't have translations of the proposta di acquisto, and people just sign them and just go along with it. These words are really important, the next two phrases, because these are this tells you what you can do if anything goes wrong. So a caparra is a deposit. So you should make sure that everything is translated and you understand properly. You should be working with people that want you to understand. The next one is a caparra penitenziale. Now, that's the one that sounds the most, what can you say? It almost sounds something to do with prison almost. That's the one that sounds the most sort of, what can I say? The strictest, if you like. But the one that you should be interested in is this one, caparra confirmatoria. So what does that mean? You possibly heard that, and I've said it already this evening, that if you back out, you lose your deposit. If they back out, they pay you twice back. Okay. Now, both of these situations can lead to that. But there's a big difference between them, because this particular one, the caparra confirmatoria, you want these two words written into the contract, because what this means is that if they back out, they have to pay you double back, which is the same as the other. But with this particular one, you can force the sale. So you can actually take somebody to court and get the judge to force the sale, because they've promised, using this particular law, and this is the most common one, but you need to make sure it's on there. They can make them force the sale, as in they have to sell it, or you can also sue for expenses. So you can say, not only, obviously you have to prove that you've had expenses, but not only do I want double back, I want to force you that you have to sell, or I want to be able to claim I've come backwards and forwards twice on an airplane. It's cost me this much. And there's this that I've paid out for that I've paid out. Anything relevant to that sale, you can then put a claim in. So this one is quite. This is the one that you want. The other one, the one that sounds like this is going to be worse, isn't, because what this does is this will have. They have to pay you the double back, and you can be. You will lose your deposit. They have to pay you double back, and that's it. They can't force anything. Now, the other gentleman said that somebody was saying that you can't back out, you force. That's why it's important to read what's in the document to see what people can do, whether it's actually stated what happens. I want to know what happens if I back out. What happens if they back out? And then I want these words. I want my deposit to have these words. So it's not just a deposit, just a caparra. It's a caparra confirmatoria. That's what I want. That's what you want, because that is with consequences. As in, you can force the sale, you can sue for other damages if needs be, whereas the other one you can't. What you don't want to do, and I've actually seen people do these sorts of contracts, is have it where there is nothing that happens if you back out, as in literally nothing. I've read a couple of contracts and helping people buy properties that have signed contracts, and when they say, well, I've heard that it's double back, that's automatic. That's not true. It's not automatic at all. It has to be written in there. And some agents, for some strange reason, there's one in particular that's been doing it quite a lot, which I don't like. And there's no forfeit. That was the other word I was thinking of. There's no forfeit for the seller if you back out. So if I pay you $5,000 to hold the property, that you can back out and sell it to somebody else and just give me my $5,000 back, or even worse than that, there's nothing even written in to say what they should do, then that's not right. Why pay? What's the point of paying anything? You know, because some owners would say, well, you know, why should I pay you double back? Then your response should be, well, why should I give you a deposit then? We may as well go back to what I said before about the, let's just go to the final contract then, because you're not happy with the consequences if you back out. I'm not happy just to give you money just for no reason whatsoever. So let's just go to the final signing. I know it all may sound, I can imagine some of you thinking, oh my God, but any contract, let's be honest, any contract that you do, whether a lawyer draws it up, whether a notary draws it up, or any contract whatsoever, you know, is as good as the words, as good as the written words, you know, and there are consequences, but you need to just make sure that it's written, at least written what happens. So at least it states on there that if the seller wants to back out, then they pay you double back your deposit. If the buyer wants to back out, then they lose their deposit. Make sure it's written in there quite clear. Like I said, the last thing you want to do is be in a situation where there's no penalties for anybody. So remember those, because they are really, really important. So make a note, get your pens out, make a note. I'll probably write these in the comments as well on YouTube. That is the one that you want. This is the one is okay in the sense of, you know, they've still got to pay you double back, but this is the one where you can force a sale. So let's say you've sold your property and you say, hang on a minute, you can't back out. I've sold everything and I'm coming to buy this property, you can't back out. We've got to do this. So this is the one that you want. So as I said to you before, the compromesso, the proposta di acquisto, all of these are really serious. You can't sort of think, again, some people will say, I did this and then I backed out and they took my money and that kind of thing. I wouldn't say that. It's a contract. It's a serious contract. The problem is when people come out to buy holiday homes and that sort of thing, everybody's in a good mood, the sun's shining, everything looks great, they really want that Italian property, and all of a sudden then people are signing documents without really thinking about the consequences. If you definitely want that property and you're 100% going to do it, then you go for it and you can put deposit down and you can be confident that the law here is good enough that it keeps these two people together, it keeps the contract going, and there, as I said before, and there's consequences as well tied to it. But there's also consequences for you. You can't just say, well, I didn't realize all of that. You shouldn't have signed it then. It's as simple as that. You should have, I would want everything translated just to make sure that it's how you want it. And just basically understand that as soon as you start putting money in, if there's any problems, you will lose that money. It's as simple as that. Okay, so they're the main contracts that you come across. Always remember this one at the start. If anybody's got any questions, please, you can ask questions because I'm coming towards the end of the subject. This must be a record, 46 minutes. So I'm quite happy to take questions on this or other parts of buying. If anybody's got anything, I don't mind answering a few questions to keep us going a little bit longer. And then, so you got the attestazione di visita. That is, if you've seen a property and the estate agents ask you to sign something to say you've seen it, that is a normal thing. Then you've got a proposta di acquisto, a proposal to buy. So that's your intention. That's your way of putting an offer in. Now, sometimes some agents will play ball and you say, look, I'm thinking about putting this offer in. Do you think they'll accept it? Can you try the owner out? That kind of thing. And hopefully you're going to be working with people that will allow that. But this is the official way. This is a put your money where your mouth is. That basically translates as in the nicest possible way. Then you have a compromesso, a promise to buy and a promise to sell. Now, you don't need to do the proposta di acquisto. You don't need to do any of these. But if there was such a thing as an order to these and the proposal to buy is the first with an estate agent, if it's without an estate agent, so if you're buying directly from the owner, it's usually a compromesso, and that can be drawn up by a notary, by a geometra, by those types of people that will draw this up. And just because you have it done at a notary doesn't make it more official, because these are official documents anyway. But some people prefer to have it done at the notary, and then maybe they're using that particular notary for the final contract as well. And then the most important things to remember, these are the two words that you want in that document, or it needs to be mentioned what happens when people back out, whether that's you or the person that's buying. You need to know what the consequences are. So they're the main deposit contracts, and then you've got the final contract that we're going to talk about next week, which is the rogito. That is the final act. That is the end of it all. That's when you get your dream home in Italy and it's signed off, done, the keys are handed over, and you hand the rest of the money away. Joy is saying, with the proposta di acquisto, is it written that it's dependent upon satisfactory surveys, legal searches, etc.? No, it's not at all. Now, it is written in there that the documents you must be able to sell the property. In other words, lots of times there are people that maybe it's still in grandfather's name because they haven't done what we call the successione. We spoke about this before on a previous, when we did our legal document stream. So anybody that wants to look back, you can look at that one. The legal documents talks about things like this. But let's say it's still in grandfather's name, which it shouldn't be, or maybe they've just passed away and they need to do what we call a successione, which is it's where it gets passed down from the person that's deceased to the rightful heirs, if you like. Now, in this circumstances, it will be written into the contract that this needs to be done. If you already know exactly what needs to be done, I had a case recently where there was an extension built that's not being registered, and it actually specified that that must be done and registered correctly before the final act. So things like that will be written in there, that everything has to be supplied. They have to supply an energy certificate, because that's something else that the owners have to supply. So they have to make sure that all their documents are in perfect order. So they usually go to their own geometer and say, I've sold this house. Can you make sure everything's all right? Because I need to give all the documents up to the notary and that kind of thing. But regarding surveys, no, these are things that you need to do before you get into these contracts. Don't just presume that it's subject to, because that's not how it works. And also, even in your own country, I know in the UK sometimes they'll do subject, but subject to what exactly? Subject to, because then it can be open to interpretation. One surveyor can say, well, that's not good. I think the house is going to fall down in 20 years' time. And another surveyor, even in your own country, could say, well, I think it's going to fall down in 50 years' time. And another one could say, I don't think it's going to fall down. So then you could have a contract that is huge and covering so many different scenarios that it'd just be impossible to do, which is why things like that need to be done beforehand, before you decide to put the contract down. So if you've got any concerns and worries about a property, then you should have somebody look at it, which is why I keep mentioning it, I like to take a geometer around with me. Anybody that comes visiting properties with me and they're looking at properties that are listed by private sellers, and somebody says, I really love this one, Dave, but I'm a little bit concerned about this crack, or I'm a little bit concerned about this. That's then when I get a geometer in and say, look, tell us what you think this is. Obviously, there's still no guarantees at that stage, but there's no guarantees when somebody else comes out, an engineer comes out to check it, because until you start digging around and doing work, you're never going to know for definite, but at least you'll have a better idea of the status of how that property is. And you just have to accept that if there is a leaking roof and somebody said, well, I think it's a slip tile and this and that and the other, you do have to think just like you would anywhere else in the world where there may be a chance I may have to replace the roof at some point. You know, these are not things that are that just happen in Italy. It happens all over the world. We all take responsibility. I'm sure we've all bought houses. We certainly have. Back in the UK, where you think everything's okay, you had a surveyor go, but then when you read the small print of surveyor, I mean, I actually found a pair of jeans stuffed into a hole that none of us saw, this hole at the side of the house. Not even the surveyor saw it. But it's always covered at the bottom that there could be things that's missed, or could be things that, you know, we're not taking responsibility of, blah, 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 blah. So you just have to try and get as much backup as you can from somebody like a geometer. But by the time it gets to contract, that's when things you should be happy with everything, because it's written, you've seen it, you like it, and it's good for the use that you wanted. Should you worry, Ursula is saying, should you worry about energy class? Most properties are class G. That's correct. Most properties are class G. And in my opinion, I shouldn't say you shouldn't be worried about, because I might get loads of people jumping up and down on me saying that's not very green of you. But you're going to find most are G, because even stone properties, for instance, you know, that don't have insulation in them. Maybe the property hasn't got double glazed windows. Maybe it's got double glazed windows, but they're old windows. Maybe the roof's the old style roof and all the rest of it. The vast majority are going to be G. That's just the way it is. And to actually get that energy certificate up, then you're going to have to do certain jobs, as we all know, maybe improve the boiler, maybe change the windows, all that kind of stuff. But as I said, the vast majority are G, even ones that are in pretty good condition. So how can I phrase it without having anybody jumping up and down on me? Should you worry about it? I'm not going to answer it, but I sort of did already anyway. Hope that's all right. Ursula, what is the time frame for the owner to respond to the offer? It's usually, good question. It can be written in there. It can be up to 14 days. It's usually done within a few days, to be fair, because the estate agent will usually ask them to come into the office and say, look, this is the offer, let's get on with it. So the vast majority are usually done pretty quick. But as I say, you just need to be prepared that you need to leave something as a deposit to say, yes, I'm being serious, because there's lots of owners that you can ring them up and say, you know, would you accept X amount for the property? And they will say, but have you got anything, you know, to show that they're willing? It's a normal thing here to start paying things out straight away. So people are usually quite quick with decisions and that kind of thing. So yeah, it shouldn't really take too long. Okay, guys, I think that's one of our shorter ones. I'm actually 5 minutes early. That hour's flown by, hasn't it? So thank you so much for joining us. Remember, next week, I'm forgetting now which one it is. Next week is the Inside the Notary's Office. So it's a bit of a follow-on to this one. These are the little bit more serious side of streaming, but we have to be a little bit serious sometimes. I feel a bit serious this week. It's been a serious week. So I'll try and cheer up a little bit next week's a little bit serious as well, Inside the Notary's Office. But at least then we've got Meet the Home Buyers on the 23rd. So that's always a good fun one. But these are all important things. The thing to remember is the system is great here. Don't use social media to ask questions that should only be answered by a professional. If the biggest piece of advice I can give you is that, because so many people ask so many questions, you think, why are you doing that? If you want to ask the questions, come on here and feel free to ask here. If you don't think I'm professional enough, that's fine as well. Just ask somebody that you consider a professional. Don't just put it out there to all the armchair experts. I'm not going to go into all that, but just don't. The system is fantastic. The system is safe, and you shouldn't worry about buying a property here whatsoever. Use the right people, ask the right questions, and if you don't understand Italian, it must be translated into your language. These all seem like basic things, but you'd be surprised how many people don't do things like that. Simple, simple, simple. And if you're unsure, as I say, come on here, ask us, or email us at info@ahomeiniitaly.com. Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining us for a serious Thursday. We'll try and not make it too serious next week. Hopefully I'll be in a slightly better mood and had a slightly better week. And then we'll start getting to the fun things after that. Thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate all the support. Check out the YouTube page. I've just put another amazing apartment on in the center of beautiful Sulmona in Abruzzo. So have a look at that. Anybody that hasn't already seen it, take a look at some past videos and get ready for some more future content, because we've got some great stuff coming up really soon. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great evening. Have a great weekend. And I will see you next Thursday.